Over 80 episodes strong, get cozy. It's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel. We are here to share great books with all of you. We're so looking forward to the next 80 episodes. Sit back, relax, and get cozy. It's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel. Today on Let's Get Cozy, Bunnicula Tuesdays are going to continue, and we're going to be sharing chapters 3 and 4 of James Howe's book, Bunnicula. It all starts now because, that's right, Kiyaya, it's time to get cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel.
Hi, my name is Donnell Carter, certified personal trainer through National Academy of Sports Medicine, and certified nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition. I'm here today to talk to you about online personal training, the future of personal training right on your phone. We start the week with an overview and progress reports. Following that, we have our calendar, day 3, 4, 5 different workouts. Further in depth, we see exactly what we're doing for the day. Find out more information, contact me.
Stories are such an important part of our lives. Join my friend Kiyaya and I for Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel, where we share some of the greatest picture books and chapters from children's and young adult literature to inspire you to keep embedding literacy into your days. Chapter 3, Some Unusual Goings-On. The next few days passed uneventfully. I was very bored. Our new arrival slept all day, and Chester, whose curiosity had been aroused by the strange behavior of the rabbit that first night, had decided to stay awake every night to observe him. Therefore, he too spent most of his days sleeping, so I had no one to talk to. The evenings weren't much better. Toby and Pete, who used to play with me as soon as they got home from school, now ran immediately to that silly rabbit's cage to play with him. Or, at least they tried to. Bunnicula did not make the most energetic playmate. It took him quite a while to wake up each night, and then when he did awaken, he didn't do much except hop around the living room. He didn't play catch, he didn't fetch, and he didn't roll over to get his tummy rubbed. I couldn't understand why they played with him at all. I expect it was because he was new and different, but I was confident that they would soon tire of him and come back to trusty old Harold. Finally, on the morning of the 4th day, I caught Chester bleary-eyed over the water dish. He grumbled at me in a most unpleasant manner. You know, Chester, you were never exactly charming in the morning, but lately you are just downright grumpy. Chester growled in response. What are you doing this for anyway? What are you looking for? He's just a cute little bunny. Cute little bunny? Chester was amazed at my character analysis. That's what you think. He's a danger to this household and everybody in it. Oh, Chester, I said with an indulgent smile, I think your reading has gone to your head. It's just because I do read that I know what I'm talking about. Well, what are you talking about? I still don't understand. I'm not sure yet, but I know there's something funny about that rabbit. That's why I have to keep alert. But look at you. You're exhausted. You sleep all the time. How can you call that alert? I'm awake when it's important. He sleeps all day, so I sleep all day. So just what have you seen that first night that makes you uneasy? Well, said Chester, that is... At this point, Chester started to bathe his tail, which is a cat's way of changing a subject he finds uncomfortable. He then stumbled sleepily into the living room. "So," I asked again, following him, "what have you seen?" "Nothing," he snapped, and proceeded to curl up on his chair to go to sleep. After a moment, he opened one eye. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to see. For the next few mornings, it was the same routine. I'd be ready for a good romp around the living room, and Chester would go to sleep. Pete and Toby were at school. Mr. Monroe was at the university. He never did too much romping anyway. And Mrs. Monroe was at her office. No one to play with poor, neglected Harold. At first, I thought I could strike up a friendship with Bunnicula and maybe teach him a few tricks, but I could never wake him up. He was always waking up just about sunset when I wanted to take a snooze. A rabbit, I concluded, is cute to look at, but is generally useless, especially as a companion to dogs. So I would retire each day with my favorite shoe to the rug and chew. Now, some people, especially Mr. and Mrs. Monroe, can't understand my taste for shoes and yell at me for snacking on them. But I always say there's no accounting for taste. For instance, I remember one evening when Mr. Monroe picked some of his sour balls out of the bowl by his chair and dropped a green one on the floor. He didn't notice as it rolled across the room and landed near my nose. I decided this was a perfect opportunity to try one for myself. I placed it in my mouth and immediately wished I hadn't. As the tears started running out of my eyes, I thought, what's wrong with my mouth? It's turning inside out. Mr. Monroe immediately noticed that something had happened. What's the matter, Harold? Are you looking for someone to kiss? Help, help! I wanted to cry, but all that came out was an ooh sound. I oohed for days. So how can anyone who likes green sour balls criticize me for preferring a nice penny loafer or a bedroom slipper? But back to the matter at hand. One morning, Chester had news. That bunny, he whispered to me across our food bowls, got out of his cage last night. Don't be ridiculous, I said. How could he break through that wire? Look how little he is. That's just it. He didn't break through any wire. He got out of his cage without breaking anything or opening any doors. I looked puzzled. So Chester told me the following story. Now, Harold, he said, I don't want you thinking I'm not a good watch cat, but after a few hours last night, I grew curious about the time. I went into the hallway, and you know that new clock they've got? The big one? The one that goes all the way to the ceiling? Well, see, it has this thing in the middle called a pendulum. At first, I figured I would just leave it alone. It looked like that spool they tied on a string and hung from the doorknob for me to play with when I was a kitten. Every time I hit that silly spool with my paw, it would swing back and hit me on the nose. I hated that toy. So naturally, when I saw this one, I decided not to have anything to do with it. I checked the time. It was midnight. I was all set to go back to the living room when something stopped me. Curiosity? I ventured. I suppose you could call it that. I prefer to think of it as the challenge of the unknown. I put one paw over my nose and reached out with the other one and gave it a good smack. I darn near broke my arm. It's still tender. See how swollen it is? He showed me his little paw. I couldn't see anything wrong with it. But I knew better than to argue with him. Oh, yes, I said, that looks terrible. You must be suffering awfully. You better go easy today. He limped dramatically just far enough to display his new handicap and continued. I couldn't even get to the pendulum. Somebody had put glass in front of it. And I was pretty mad. I was all set to go back, but at the same time, I couldn't help watching the thing move back and forth. Back and forth, back and forth. It was so easy to watch, and before I knew what was happening, I was waking up. You fell asleep? I said incredulously. I couldn't help it. I didn't even know it had happened, but I looked up at the face of the clock, and it was 12:45. I'd been gone 45 minutes. I ran back into the living room, looked at Bunnicula's cage, and it was empty. I couldn't imagine where he was. Then I noticed a light coming from under the kitchen door. I went into a crouch, stalking the light, when click! I heard the refrigerator door close, and the light went out. It must have been Mr. Monroe having his midnight snack, I suggested. No, that's what I thought. I jumped on my chair, curled up real quick, and kept one eye open, pretending to be asleep. Slowly, the door to the kitchen squeaked open. This little head poked out from around the corner and looked to either side to see if the coast was clear. Then, guess who came bouncing out all by himself and with that idiotic grin of his plastered all over his face. Well, I guess it wasn't Mr. Monroe, I said. Not unless he wears bunny pajamas and gets very tiny at night. Bunnicula, huh? You got it. Unfortunately, I hadn't positioned myself so I could see him get back into the cage, and I didn't want to let him know that I had seen anything, so I had to stay put. I still don't know how he got out or back in. At this point, Mr. Monroe came downstairs to make breakfast. I wondered if Chester hadn't dreamed the whole thing. He did admit he'd fallen asleep, and as I've said, he has quite an imagination. But I was game. After all, there hadn't been any excitement in this place for days. Chester and I took our positions under the kitchen table. We didn't have long to wait. Holy cow, Mr. Monroe yelped as he opened the refrigerator door. He took this funny-looking white thing out of the fridge and held it at arm's length. Peter, come down here. What is that? I whispered. Beats me, Chester answered. It looks like a white tomato. Very funny, I said as Pete came into the kitchen. Peter, have you been playing with your chemistry set in here? No, Dad. Why? I thought this might be one of your experiments. Do you know what it is? Gee, Dad, it looks like a white tomato. Just then, Mrs. Monroe and Toby came in the door. What's all the fuss about? Mrs. Monroe asked. We were just trying to figure out what this is. Toby pulled it down so we could have a better look. Well, he said, it looks to me like a white tomato. Mr. Monroe took a good, long look. You know what? He said to his wife. It really does look like a white tomato. There's one way to find out, said Mrs. Monroe, who was always the practical one. Let's cut it open and see what's inside. Everybody gathered around the table. I jumped up on a chair, and in all the excitement, no one noticed that I had my paws on the table, which under normal circumstances was discouraged, to say the least. Chester wasn't so lucky. Chester, get off the table, Mrs. Monroe said. Chester jumped onto Toby's shoulders, where he stayed to view the proceedings. Mrs. Monroe took her sharpest knife and cut cleanly through the thing. It fell into two halves. It's a tomato, all right, said Mrs. Monroe. Here are the seeds. But it's all white, Toby observed. And look, Pete said, it's dry. So it is, Mr. Monroe said as he picked up one of the halves. There is no juice at all. Well, Anne, what do you think? It's gone bad, I guess. I've never heard of a tomato turning white before. Come on, she said, clearing the table. Let's throw it out and have breakfast. And Harold, get your paws off the table. Rats. Chester jumped down from Toby's shoulders and motioned for me to follow him into the living room. This had better be important, I said. They're cooking bacon. A white tomato. Very significant, Chester murmured. So, it's a white tomato, I said, edging my way back to the kitchen door. What does that have to do with Bunnicula? I can tell you one thing, Chester said. I got a good look at that tomato, and there were suspicious marks on the skin. So, I believe they were teeth marks. So tonight I'm going to reread a book I read last year. How fascinating, I said as the aroma of frying bacon wafted across my nostrils. And what book might that be? The Mark of the Vampire. What? I stopped dead in my tracks. Meet me tonight after the others have gone to sleep. You better take a nap today so you can stay awake. Chester closed his eyes. I shifted my look to Bunnicula, who seemed to be asleep in the cage. A tiny smile sat upon his lips. A happy dream, I wondered? Or something else? My reverie was broken by the sound of crunching bacon. I was in the kitchen in a flash. Ready for chapter 4? Okay. Chapter 4. A cat prepares. I almost didn't make it to my meeting with Chester that night. Toby had a feast in his room. It was Friday night, and on Friday nights, Toby gets to stay up and read as late as he wants to. So of course he needs lots of food to keep up his strength. Good food like cheese crackers, chocolate cupcakes, my very favorite, the kind with the cream in the middle. Pretzels and peanut butter sandwiches. The last I cannot abide because my mouth always gets stuck. Chocolate cupcakes with cream in the center, however, are another story. This particular evening I stationed myself on Toby's stomach. Usually, I'm a little more subtle, but have missed out on the bacon at breakfast. I was not about to take any chances on the chocolate cupcakes with the cream in the center. Toby knew what I was after, but sometimes he thinks it's funny and he plays little games with me. Hi, Harold. I'll bet you'd like a peanut butter sandwich, wouldn't you? Here, you have this one that's left over from yesterday while I eat this boring old chocolate cupcake, which is nice and fresh and has cream in the middle. Okay, Harold? Ha, my sides are splitting. What's the matter? Don't you want the peanut butter sandwich? All right, I'll put it away for another night. Oh, here's something you might like. It's a green sour ball from Dad's candy dish that was stuck to my sock. Would you like that? Huh, pal? Oh boy, the kid is really hot tonight. No, huh? Well, I'd give you one of my cupcakes, but I know how much you hate chocolate. Would a little drooling on your stomach help convince you otherwise? Oh, you like chocolate. Okay then, you can have both of them. One thing I have to say about Toby, although he's got a rotten sense of humor, he's a nice kid. Naturally, once I'd eaten both cupcakes, which took approximately 4 seconds, I felt obliged to hang around and let Toby know I was grateful. What better way than to share a few of his cheese crackers? Well, Harold, Toby said sometime later, we'd had quite a party, but I have to go to sleep now. I can't keep my eyes open, so I'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out what happens in the next chapter. This is a good book, Harold. It's called Treasure Island. It's by a man named Robert Louis Stevenson. It's kind of hard reading, though. I have to keep looking the big words up in the dictionary, so it's taking me a long time to get through it. I've always had trouble with words myself. Half the time they don't mean what I think they're going to, and then, even when I do find out what they mean, I forget the next day anyway. You might say that I'm smart, but just not the scholarly type. But it's a really good story, Toby continued. It's all about pirates and this little boy just like me. No dogs? And a parrot, Harold. A parrot? What's a parrot? Is there anything about a chocolate cake? That's my idea of a treasure. Well, good night, Harold. If you're going to sleep here, you'll have to get off my stomach, because it's a little full right now. Good night, Toby. I curled up at the foot of the bed, but I couldn't sleep trying to figure out what a parrot was. I thought maybe it might be a lady pirate, since the words sounded something alike, but then again, I thought it might be an umbrella. Chester would know, I thought, so I went downstairs to ask him. Well, you certainly took your time, Chester snapped as I sauntered casually into the room. I finished my book half an hour ago. Where were you? It so happens I was discussing great works of literature with Toby. Since when is a Twinkies wrapper considered a great work of literature? I decided to ignore that. Unfortunately, several chocolate crumbs fell from my mouth to the floor at precisely that moment. As a matter of fact, I said, trying valiantly to regain my dignity, we were talking about Treasure Island. Ever hear of it? ever hear of it? Ever hear of it? He sneered. I've read that when I was a kitten. Oh, then tell me, Chester, what is a parrot? Chester looked at me scornfully. A parrot? He said. It's a tropical zygodactyl bird. Order, Ctesiformes. It has a stout curved hooked bill, is often crested, brightly variegated, and an excellent mimic. In other words, Harold, a parrot is a little bird with a big mouth. Oh, I said after a moment. I thought maybe it was an umbrella. Did you get so busy discussing parrots with Toby that you forgot you were going to meet me here? This is important, Harold. I still wasn't sure what a parrot was, but I decided this was not the time to pursue it. Come over here, Chester commanded, indicating his chair, and let me show you this book. I looked at the chair. Chester was already sitting in it with a very large book open in front of him. I don't think there's going to be room for both of us, Chester, I said. Come on, you're wasting time. Just jump up here. I surveyed the scene carefully. I knew I would have to get a running start since there was just a tiny spot left for me. And I would never be able to fit into it if I pulled myself up slowly. Apparently, I was taking too long for Chester's liking. Will you get up here? He hissed. Okay, if that's what you want. I ran and jumped onto the chair, landing with a great kerplop. Chester, where are you? I cried. I couldn't see anything but the back of the chair. I had forgotten to turn myself around. I'm here, you great oaf. I turned my head. What are you doing on the floor? I asked. You knocked me on the chair. Off the chair. Now just stay put. I'm coming back up. I moved to the back of the chair and Chester landed on the front. Now let's see, he said. We both have to see the book. You come over here and I'll move this way. I don't know if you've ever tried to watch a cat try to decide where to sit, but it involves a lot of circling around, sitting, getting up again, circling some more, thinking about it, lying down, standing up, bathing a paw or a tail, and circling. A dog, on the other hand, sits. This looks like a good spot, a dog will say to himself, and he will then lower his body to the spot in question, and is usually so secure in his decision that he will fall asleep immediately. Chester took what felt like 20 minutes to settle himself in, and just as I was drifting off, the kicks started coming. Come on, Harold, quit hogging the seat, and wake up. What are you trying to do, take a little cat nap? Ha ha ha. I yawned. Now, said Chester, turning to the book, let's get down to brass tacks. What exactly is on your mind? I asked. This book and that rabbit. Chester replied, now tell me, Harold, have you noticed anything funny about that rabbit? Think about it. No, I said, but I've certainly noticed a lot of funny things about you recently. That rabbit sleeps all day. So do I. So do you. Furthermore, he's got funny little sharp teeth. So do I. So do you. Furthermore, he gets in and out of his cage by himself. What kind of rabbit could do that? A smart one. I said, I could do it. We're not talking about you, Harold. We're talking about the rabbit. Now, where did they find him? At the movies. Yes, but what movie? Dracula, I said. So, he said quickly. Remember the note around his neck? What language was it in? An obscure dialect of the Carpathian mountain region, I answered smugly. He didn't know everything. Aha! Chester said, but what area of the Carpathian mountain region? Area? What's an area? I looked at him blankly. Transylvania, he cried triumphantly, and that proves my point. What point? What are we talking about? And don't forget the white tomato, that's most important of all. But what? This book, said Chester, disregarding me, tells us just what we need to know. What? I practically screamed. What does it tell us? What does this book have to do with Bunnicula? What are you talking about? What's going on here? I can't stand it anymore. Chester regarded me coolly. You really, are very excitable, Harold. That's not good for your blood pressure. I put my paws around his throat. Tell me, I said in a threatening voice, or I'll squeeze you till you pop. Okay, don't get upset. Now this book tells you everything you've always wanted to know about vampires, but were afraid to ask. Personally, I never wanted to know anything about vampires, but at the moment I was afraid to tell that to Chester. I still don't understand what vampires have to do with our little furry friend. 1, Chester said, vampires do not sleep at night. They sleep only during the day. The same holds true for this rabbit. 2, vampires get in and out of locked rooms. Bunnicula gets in and out of locked cages. This was beginning to interest me. Didn't you say something about the refrigerator? That's right. He got the refrigerator open all by himself. 3, vampires have long pointed teeth. They are called fangs. Well, don't we have fangs? No, we have canines. That's different. What's different about it? Fangs are more pointed and vampires use fangs to bite people on the neck. Yuck! Who would want to do that? Vampires would that too. Wait a minute. I saw Mrs. Monroe bite Mr. Monroe on the neck once. Does that mean she's a vampire? Boy, are you dumb? She's not a vampire. She's a lawyer. She bites necks. I don't think that's quite the same thing now. Bunnicula does not bite people on the necks, at least not so far. But he does bite vegetables. On the neck? I asked. Vegetables don't have necks, Harold. Vegetables are like that. It's like dogs. Dogs don't have brains. Dogs are like that. Oh yeah? I said, of course he bites vegetables. All rabbits bite vegetables. He bites them, Harold, but he does not eat them. That tomato was all white. What does that mean? It means that he paints vegetables, I ventured. It means he bites vegetables to make a hole in them and then he sucks out all the juices. But what about all the lettuce and carrots that Toby has been feeding him in his cage? Aha, what indeed? Chester said, look at this. Whereupon he stuck his paw under the chair cushion and brought out with a flourish an assortment of strange white objects. Some of them looked like unironed handkerchiefs, and the others didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. What are they? I asked. Chester smiled. Lettuce and carrots, he said. White lettuce and carrots. I found them hidden behind his cage. I was aghast. What did it all mean? Could Chester be right? Was this harmless-looking little ball of fluff really a vampire? Just then, Chester let out a yelp. Look! He said. The cage is empty again. Oh, we're fools! We're fools! We've let him get out of our sight. It's your fault. My fault? You're the one who took 20 minutes to sit down. Well, if you hadn't knocked me off in the first place... Wait a minute. Why are we arguing? Let's find Bunnicula. Just then, we heard a click in the kitchen. Refrigerator, I whispered. Chester nodded. We jumped down and moved cautiously to the kitchen door. Shh! Chester warned unnecessarily as we crept along. Don't make any noise. We don't want him to hear us coming. Obviously, I retorted. The light went out under the door. He must have closed the refrigerator. Chester said, easy now. We pushed the door open. The kitchen was dark. There was not the sound. Psst! Chester! What? I can't see. I can, but I can't see him. He's not here. There was a soft scamper across the linoleum, and we turned just in time to see the little white fluff of tail bounce out the door into the living room. Drat! We've missed him. Come on, Harold. Let's see if we can catch up with him. Chester started toward the door. Wait, Chester. What's it on the floor by the refrigerator? He turned. This new object interested him more than following Bunnicula. Watch out, he said. I'll take care of this. He slunk across the room slowly, muscles taut, eyes alert. When he was about 6 inches away, he stuck out his paw, closed his eyes, and batted at the object tentatively. I don't think he made any contact. "Get closer," I said. Chester's eyes popped open. "Who's the cat here?" he asked. "I know what I'm doing." And he proceeded to bat the air 3 more times. "What is it?" I squealed as my throat contracted in fear. "I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it's not alive." "Oh boy, if I wait for you, we'll be here all night." I walked bravely over to the object and sniffed it. "Well?" asked Chester. "Beats me." Chester came closer. After a moment of close examination, he gasped. I jumped. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "Harold!" Chester blurted. "What? What? It's... What is it, Chester?" "It's a white zucchini!" Kiyaya and I hope that you enjoyed chapters 3 and 4 of Bunnicula by James Howe, and I can't wait to see what that cat and that dog have in store, as they still want to learn more about Bunnicula. Tune in next week for chapters 5 and 6 of Bunnicula by James Howe. We'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Let's Get Cozy, as it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel. Stay safe and healthy, and remember, reading is power.